30 years ago, we never would have imagined being here talking about this. We went from childhood games to energetic alignment. By doing the work, we created better versions of ourselves. Join us, two women sharing their intimate journal entries on their path to consciousness. Get in here, get in here, get in here. It took a health scare for me to finally become aware and present. In 2019, I fell incredibly ill and for 10 days braved the most excruciating pain until I found myself in the ER. Mortality has a way of waking you up and being grateful for every moment. It also made me realize how long I had spent harping about the past, anxious about the future, and relying on distractions to avoid the sinking feelings and thoughts I knew I needed to address. It took almost a year to finally figure out what was wrong with me, only to find out that I was what was wrong with me. My shadows had caught up to me. They were making me physically ill. Fearing I'd leave my children prematurely, I got serious about my healing. First, physical. That was the easy part. Then came the internal healing, which was not without dread, loneliness, avoidance, tears, heartache, pain, and frustration. I had to work through every trauma, no matter how big or small, to heal my body from the inside out. I remember after years of work and a very pivotal therapy appointment where I had bared it all, I was completely honest, not feeling judgment for the first time. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror after that appointment and literally seeing my face change. The baggage had fallen off, the darkness had lifted. I was a new woman, and I was finally looking at myself in the mirror.
In this moment and in this body, I am 100% present. I say this to myself before I start every meditation session. I sit down on my mat and I close my eyes. I take 3 to 4 breaths in and out, and then I begin to take inventory of my 5 senses. I hear the plane flying over my house, the dog barking in the neighbor's window, or my stomach digesting the food from earlier. A few times my phone has gone off because I forgot to put it on Do Not Disturb. Typically, there's no taste in my mouth unless it's from the toothpaste left behind from brushing my teeth. I feel my muscles jumping sometimes, or a draft of air if the fan's blowing. I smell the different aromas of my house depending on what time of day it is. Most of the time, it's the smell of my daughter's perfume that lingers after she leaves for school. And finally, I see darkness as my eyes are closed and the curtains are drawn. But there have been a few occasions where I've seen different colors of the rainbow, mostly purple or yellow. This is how I began my meditation journey 5 years ago. By starting a daily practice of checking in on myself, I've developed a relationship of awareness, self-love, and compassion, all by being in the present moment. Get in here, get in here, get in here. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Get In Here podcast. So today's episode, as you can already imagine, is about being present. And I'm actually going to start with you, Zakkiya, because, you kind of opened up and was very vulnerable about your health scare with us. And then we can kind of end it with mine, because mine was kind of about that healing journey and what it takes to kind of get through those rough moments and patches. So, okay, 5 years ago, did you say 5 years ago?
Yeah,
In 2019,
it was
health
2019.
scare.
Yeah.
It sounded almost like sickness or illness had manifested within you. Like it wasn't a disease. It wasn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think happened?
No, absolutely. So it was the end of 2019. I became really ill. Now, what we do know, which we didn't know at the time, was I likely had the first strand of COVID. And no one knew that, because I remember when I was in the ER, they were like, oh, you need to wear a mask if you've been to China or if you've been around someone who's been to China. So it was still very early on in the stage and you didn't think, but now we know in retrospect, that's what it was. But when I was in the hospital, they told me, they were like, you're severely anemic. Did you know that? I hadn't. I had never heard that before. And so I remember being discharged, and she said, you probably need to go see your PCP or, someone after this to follow up about the anemia. And I ended up going to see my internist. And so she had run my blood work. I had been there a year before. And so when she ran my blood work this time, she was like, your numbers are all off. Like, what has changed? What has happened? And I didn't really know at that time, right? But I remember in that appointment, she goes, you may have a rare blood cancer. And I remember just being like, what? At that point, I was vegan, so I thought I was taking good care of myself. And I
Yeah.
remember leaving that appointment, and I ended up going to the original House of Pancakes, right? Because I was like, I need to feed these emotions that I'm feeling right now. So I got pancakes, girl, and I had a slab of pork bacon. I don't even eat pork like
Oh
that, but
my
I was like, I just
goodness.
need something right now to feel good, right? Or
Yeah.
something that I needed.
Mm.
So it took me a year. I had to go to the internist. I had to go to a gastroenterologist. I had to go to my gynecologist, all
Wow.
to try to find out what was happening and why I was so anemic. There were a number of tests. I did colonoscopies. I had to have a biopsy, all of these things. And funny enough, my gynecologist, because we believed it was because of heavy periods, is probably what was happening, right?
Mm.
Was why I was so anemic. And we ended up doing a biopsy. And at that point, I had an IUD. And I was kind of like feeling like, I don't want this IUD in me anymore. I'm scared that it's going to move or something. So I was like, hey, can you just take the IUD out? She was like, I will, but let's try to figure out what's going on first. So she was the one that was like, let's do a biopsy of your uterus because you should have never been given an IUD just to try to control the bleeding had we not figured out what was wrong with it. That's something to do with the healthcare system. We could talk about that at another time, right?
That's another show.
So yeah, that is a whole nother show, right? I had gotten a new gynecologist too, I will say that.
Thank you.
And so that was also helpful. And she did the biopsy. She removed the IUD. And then, when I followed up with her later, she goes, your uterus was full of polyps. She was like, full of polyps. She was like, we removed them all, which is great. And she was like, and that probably is what was attributing to the heavy bleeding and the anemia and such. So much so, girl, I had gone from previously to like almost 10-day heavy periods to the month after that biopsy, I had a 4-day period. The first 4-day period I had since before I'd had my children. All this to say, though, for me, it almost felt like when she cleaned out my uterus, for me, there was a mental portion of that where I was like, I needed to clean out all of the energy of anyone that I had let inside of me, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like what it felt like, a very physical removal of all of those energies. But that's also when I was like, okay, that was the physical piece. I've gotten that under control. But when you're faced with mortality or thinking that you may die, you also like, what else do I need to clean up in my life? And that's what really started my path to healing was like, okay, I've taken care of the anemia. I've got that under control, Zakkiya, but we need to also face some of these demons, some of these shadows, some of these skeletons in your closet who I actually believe what was making me ill and was
Yeah.
keeping me sick because I had shame and guilt that I was harboring that was sitting in my body manifesting in some cases I would believe could be manifested as polyps, right? And I know Black women in particular, a lot of us struggle with polyps and fibroids and all these things, and thinking about the mental and physical aspect and how they do go together. And so that's when I got clear with what I needed to do. So it wasn't cute. It wasn't fun, but it was doing the shadow work.
No.
And it started out with that book, I think I said in a previous episode, Pussy Prayers, which was really like going through and asking questions, poignant questions about when was the first time you felt shame or when was the first time you felt embarrassment or guilt, and like trying to work through those things. So that's really where I learned how to be present because I was so focused or so living in the past or worried about the future that I was not living in the present moment. And that's
Right.
how, like you said in meditation perfectly in your journal, that was the first time that I really sat down and was like, I am here right now. This is the
Mhm.
only moment I have.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote my journal entry twice. And the first one was just talking about, oh, you only have the now moment. You have to be present. And I was like, and then a few hours later, I was like, Zakkiya, that is not the journal entry for this.
Mm.
episode. You really need to talk about how you got here. And for me, unfortunately, it was a health scare. And I really hope that doesn't take that for other people because it's not fun. And it was years of work of like me going through all these randomized tests to figure out what was wrong, only to find out my trauma
Yeah.
and my unhealing or my unwillingness to heal the parts of me that needed to be healed was really what was wrong with me.
I mean, we're still human, right? And we're still going to think about the past, right? We're gonna try to make you stay in the present, in this episode in particular, but a lot of it, like you said, has to do with clearing out the past so that you can get into the present. For just listening to you, I'm so glad and thankful that you even listened to your body, right? Because this was the very onset of COVID. It probably was the worst strand, right? Like that
Right.
anybody had ever
Yeah.
known to man. Like we were like, what the hell? But, you know, I know in the Black community, we don't like to go to doctors and we just
Mhm,
gonna wait it
mhm.
out. Glad you went. Um, and ask the questions that mattered and kind of um, like I said, cleaned out all of that was just sitting inside of you for so long. You didn't even feel any of these like we don't feel this stuff in our bodies. And that's part of me for meditation, like going inside. I want to, like I said, I could sometimes feel my muscles jump and I'm like, what is
Mhm.
that? Like, why is my muscle jumping over here? Or just feel different things within my body. That I think kind of help me or would make me do some more investigation. Like we need to get inside our bodies, y'all, and clear out all of that, because it can build up, and it's not fun for anybody to hear you may have a rare cancer. Is that what she
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, it said to me, yeah. But to that point, there really is a mind body connection, you
It
all. And so
is.
when we walk around with these emotions, these heavy emotions, even if it's anger, our unwillingness to forgive or to let go of things, those things are going to manifest
Hmm.
somewhere.
Hmm.
And oftentimes they are manifesting in our body and we don't even realize. And so that's why it's so important that you address the emotions that you have, especially the things, the thoughts, the experiences that you fear the most reliving, those are the ones that you need to be taken care of first,
Yeah.
because those are the ones that are going to manifest in one way or another. Either it is going to affect your relationships with people, it is going to affect your motivation or your inspiration, or in my case, my physical body, my physical vessel,
Mm,
which is we only get one of them, right? So you got to
right.
take care of it. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. It's about mindfulness. It's about, your heart brain cohesion. That's a part of, the process. And I listened to someone do like a guided meditation and they were like, close your eyes and think that you're on an elevator
Mhm.
inside your body. Start at the top and kind of just go down and like stop at every chakra, right? So your crown, go to your throat. And I mean, you do it and you pretend like you can actually see something in there, right? By feeling, those parts of you. If you don't feel anything, when you're at the throat level, keep going down. Okay, so that one's cleared out. Keep going down. And so I've done that kind of meditation several times. And I mean, like I said, even though it's pretend, yeah, I know I can't see inside my body, but it's also like a feeling that you just have.
Well, but energetically, you actually can. So, because what you're describing is Reiki, essentially,
Mm,
where they're using energy to figure out where there are plugs in your system,
that's
essentially,
true.
to
Yeah.
release them and to let them entanglements within your physical body that need to
Release
be
them.
released and
Yeah.
let go of. So, though you can't physically see in your body, I do think that you can feel through your body.
Yeah.
And as I was going through this healing process, I also did some exercises like that where I would go into my meditative state and take inventory of my body. Even if I'm asking a question, where do I feel tightness or where do I feel like I could a knot or whatever the case is, and like use my mind to move that energy.
Absolutely. It's mindfulness. It
It really
that
is.
like that's the word that you're going to hear from me today, mindfulness, mindfulness. Like your brain is so powerful. We
Hmm.
don't even know it, right? But your brain can actually heal your
Hmm.
entire body. Your entire body. It's that powerful. So, by having that mindfulness and giving your attention to the things that come up that you just kind of sometimes brush aside, you know, don't do that. The other thing I wanted to say to y'all, so the myth of multitasking. I
Myth.
want to
That's
bust it
exactly what it
today.
is.
Let's
Yeah.
go ahead and bust it. Let's get it out of there. Multitasking, for a lot of us, we felt like that was gonna set us apart, from others. Like, oh, my manager's gonna think I could do this, or I can do several things at one time. Like, I want everybody to focus your attention on the thing at hand. Like,
Hmm.
I remember being at work, and we would have like a town hall meeting, right? And I mean, these are like top senior executives talking on these town halls. I'm never gonna meet them. I don't know why I need to hear them. And so I would be actually doing my work while they're talking. And so I did that for many years. But over the past couple of years, I stopped and I actually started to listen. Not that I want to take over the company or anything like that, but I just wanted to listen to what they were saying. And for me, it was the biggest difference in going to, a conference and actually having small talk about the town hall and not having to come up with small talk about myself or how the kids doing, or you know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
could actually talk, you know, insurance lingo that,
Hmm.
that I do every single day, but I just do it in my little microscopic, corner. And I feel like I wasn't a part of the bigger picture, but that was because I wasn't listening. I wasn't
Hmm.
paying attention. And
You weren't
so
present.
I was not.
Hmm.
It changed for me. It changed drastically. And now I feel like, oh, okay, I like my job. I could do this. I could talk the lingo. Um, but it's just little things like that, just being present in those moments and what you giving your attention to. And it's as
Yeah.
simple as, when you are driving, right? You should be driving. You should be paying attention to the road. You should be paying attention to the other drivers on the road. You shouldn't be trying to find the next video to watch on
Oh, well,
YouTube.
sure, of course. But when I drive, I totally zone out. Like I am driving, I am paying attention to the
Yeah,
road, but my mind is somewhere else. And my friend was like, "Don't you think that's a problem?" And I was like, "I guess it is, but I
it
actually rather
is.
enjoy it."
Hmm.
That's nor here nor there. But what I will say to what you were saying about the power of being present, because you
Yeah.
have to remember, you don't have a minute ago and you don't have a minute from now. You only
Mhm.
have this moment. And when you can live in the present moment, you have the power to change your future. Because when I was harping in what was living in the past, I was recreating those moments in my future. The moments that I don't want to relive, but by sitting in there and the emotions and the thoughts and reliving them in my head, while I was doing that in the present moment, I was telling the universe, bring me more of this, which is
Mhm.
exactly what I did not want. And so I also think, a way that we avoid being in the present, distractions.
Yes.
We use, for me, it was doom scrolling or binge watching TV, or instead of like when I knew, hey, Z, you really need to work out today. You need to go get some exercise in, and being like, I'd rather do something else. And I would find another reason to do something else. And
Yeah.
so I had to make a commitment to myself to honor the moments that I would be present and to honor what I said I would do. So if I said last night before I'm going to bed, I'm going to get up and walk in the morning before I start my day, and I didn't do it, I let myself down and then I would feel guilty about it for the rest
Yeah.
of the day. So again, I was not being in that present moment to say like, Z, you got to work out because you are not 25 years old anymore, right? You need to move. A body in motion stays in motion.
Right.
And so you got to get up. You can't be sedimentary. You sit it in a desk all day. So you need to do these things. But like, it's the idea of being present in the moment so that you can build the future, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think we find like social media is an easy way to get distracted, and you say like, oh my God, I looked up and I have been scrolling for 2 hours, and you were like, what just happened to that time?
Yeah.
So in that 2 hours of time, I could have done plenty of other things, but I was using distractions as an excuse not to do the work, whether it was actual work that I needed to have done, or work around the house, or work on myself. You have to be present. It is the only thing we have. We only have now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely now. It is the only thing that is promised. Tomorrow is not promised. We can't redo yesterday. So you have to be here right
Yeah.
now.
And let's talk about the feelings of living in the past and the feelings of living in the future. And it's going to be it's a very simple concept. You're living in the past, a lot of it, like you said, shame and guilt. Like, I didn't do
Yeah.
something right.
Mhm.
And then you have those feelings, of that. And then once you start living in the future, that's anxiety, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I need to be, this person, and you haven't even gotten to 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but you're anxious about it, and if you're living it right now, you can control how you feel right now. So that's why being present is so important, because if every single day you set out to have the best day ever, you're going to have the best day ever. Don't let anything get in your way. Even if you do get a call of some bad news, you know bad news is going to come.
Yeah.
It's the way you react to it is how you're going to feel, right? um but being able to just stay present in that moment, then tomorrow, even though you don't want to be anxious or predicting the future, but your tomorrow will be just like today. That's what you need to say to yourself. If you control how you feel right now, and today was a great day, say tomorrow is going to be just like it was today. And that's the recipe. Like, I
Mhm.
feel like that is the recipe for staying in the moment, being present, having a supportive group around you to know that this is the season that I'm in the present season. And so I don't want to talk about what happened 5 years ago. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about the future. Can you help me stay in the present moment? You have to. And I talk about seasons all the time. You have to tell people what season you're in
Yeah.
to make sure that they know, don't interrupt, don't distract my season right now, because where I'm headed, you want to be there with me. I'm
Oh,
I'm I'm on
everybody can't go.
I'm
Everybody
on
can't
to
go.
but I'm on to greatness, baby. You want to be there. But if I feel like you're a distraction, I'm gonna have to cut you, and I'm gonna have to let you go. So, for those people in your life that you really do love, and you just need to tell them, this is the season that I'm in.
Yeah. So it's funny when you're talking about like anxiety and the future. I remember, and I can go back and look at how many times I was anxious about things that never came to pass. So
Hmm.
I spent, and for me, anxiety was butterflies in my stomach or the bubble guts,
Right.
things that I didn't want to experience. But
Yeah.
again, it's that physical manifestation of the feelings and the thoughts that I was having. And so that's why I think that mind and body connection is so important, along with your gut, because illness and health really does start in your gut. Again, that's a totally separate subject. But the power of now. Eckhart Tolle actually wrote a book about that
Mm.
was also like, how do you get present? How do you get centered? And I think meditation, or just being quiet with yourself, or journaling, and making the time to set aside, if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it doesn't have to be 30 minutes to an hour, but making the commitment to yourself that you will spend time just in the present moment. You're not thinking about the work that you have to do as soon as you come out of this meditation. You're not thinking about, you got to pick up the kids, you got to make dinner. You have to just be in this present moment. And I think it'll take some discipline initially to try to be like, well, your mind wants to think about this or wants to think about that. Just bring your mind back to the center of just this moment. You don't have to be thinking about anything, but how do I stay in the present moment? Because also being in the present moment, I think you can help avoid uh, unnecessary emotions, right? So if someone has triggered you and you are not in your present moment, you will allow that trigger to set you off
Yep.
and you will respond with the same energy that they gave you. But when you are in your present moment, you can realize, who that person has had a day. And you say, you do not have to respond in that way. And you can just
Right.
say, like, hey, my bad, even if it wasn't your bad. But when you're in the present moment, you also know that, like, this is not going to influence me. This is not going to hurt me. Somebody just cut me off. I'm
Mm,
fine. Nobody got hurt. Why do
correct.
I need to, for the next 5 miles, try to chase them down just so I can look at them when I pass them?
You're
Like,
not gonna get out your car.
yeah. I'm driving in the car waiting for a future moment so I could just be like, you cut me off. Like, so it's being in that present moment and being like, I'm fine, I'm okay.
Yeah.
It was an inconvenience, but life goes on, and really being in that present moment. And then you have to really look at the distractions. You got to really look at the things,
Yeah.
either the people, places, or things that you put in your way that are stopping you from being in the present moment. I talked about it, I think last week or the week before. For me, um, excessive weed consumption for
Mm,
me was a great distraction because it allowed me to just be lazy and just sit on the
correct.
couch. I didn't have to address any of the feelings that I was feeling, but there was a medicinal part of weed that, like, I missed because it helped me with clarity. It helped me get very clear and think and be creative and come up with these, like, awesome ideas that I couldn't do when I had excessive use. When
Mm.
I was excessively using it, I was just lazy. I wanted to
That's what you
eat
were telling
and sit
yourself.
on the couch. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
I think about those kind of things. So you have to just, again, take inventory of your life. It's the same thing I say, like a vibrational detox.
Hmm.
And we did it in the episode of letting go, where it was like, where do I need to take inventory in my life of the people, places, and things that are no longer serving me?
Yeah.
Because those are the distractions that we put in place to avoid doing the work. And like you talked about alcohol, like, alcohol is a great way to numb feelings, but what we
Right.
don't realize that alcohol is also a depressant. So
Hmm.
when you feel great when you're feeling all like you got it all in your system, and then as it come down, it's actually a depressant. And so then you
Yeah.
feel like you need more of it so that you don't have to feel what you don't want to feel.
Yeah. A lot of people going through depression, if they could master this season of being present, they can actually heal themselves, right?
But I will
it's
say, just some people do need medications, and we by no means are we saying that
I
is
am
not the
not your
case for
doctor.
you. Right, not your doctor, but like depression, and I know on different levels it's for different for everyone, so you need to do what is
Yeah.
best for you. But it is important, as you were saying, to be in that present moment.
Be in the present moment. Don't just rely on the pills, right? Do the work for yourself and that's what I mean, like, healing yourself while, under doctor's orders. But I also wanted to talk about I know we talk about all of this as 40-year-old women, to kind of help ourselves, but there is also a level of parenting that being in the present moment will kind of transcend how your kids grow up, right?
Hmm.
We all have grown up in our own ways, right? Like, I don't, some good, some bad. But if you, as a 40-year-old mother, are taking, an importance to being in the present moment, it is a great opportunity for you also to instill that in your kids at a very early age, being in the present moment, right? Another one of those myth busting questions that we all ask our kids at very early ages, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then it's almost like we hold them to that for all eternity. And that's a lot of pressure for them. And that's a lot of anxiety. So that's kind of where all of those feelings just build for so many years. Ask more, present questions, right? Like just change the conversation that you have with your children so that they can understand that being in the present moment, identify their skills and talents and say, oh, I think that's something that we should, focus on, right?
Well,
And even doing meditation with them. My kids do yoga with me. Every summer, we do yoga in the morning. And then last summer, I just introduced meditation after our yoga session. And we'll sit there and they'll giggle sometimes. Like, and I'm just like,
yeah.
okay, but it's just the practice of it all.
Teaching
Um,
them the power to be present and a present. And that's a
yes.
really big one with parenting, because I do think that we are so focused on, okay, you got to get good grades. You have to have high marks.
Right.
You have to perform in your extracurricular activities. You have to be the best, where we're putting this extra pressure on them. Where I'm like, hey, I just want you to be present. I just want
Yeah.
you to be a good human being today, because that's all you have. I don't and I find this with my older daughter who's really good in soccer, and I have to remind myself, like, we're not sending her to the Olympics in the next year. That may not be what she wants to do right now. She says she wants to do it, but in 2, 4, 5 years, she could change her mind. And
Right.
so, have I devoted all this time and pressure on her, trying to be like, do this, you got to do this, and you need to go practice, and then she gives it up. That's time that I wasted in the present moment that I could have been lifting her up as
Yeah.
a person, as a human being, rather than lifting her up about her ability to kick a ball.
Yeah. So just like you and I, have set out to be each other's accountability partner through our journey, you can also do this with your children. And any activities that you start or any practices that you find useful that's working for you, do it in front of your kids and let them start asking the questions like, hey, mom, what are you
They
doing?
will.
Because, oh, they going to ask questions. They
Yeah.
nosy. They real nosy.
And even if you don't expose them, even if you don't have them do it, just exposing them to it.
Yes.
And I realize it happens all the time. Like, they sometimes will hear us talk, and then they'll ask me questions about it later, and I'll be
Yes.
like, "Oh, okay, you were kind of listening," and that's great. And so,
Okay. They ear hustling all the time.
right, they always are helpful. Okay, we need to be in this present moment, because I just looked at the time, and we are definitely going over on this episode. And we always do try to keep it at 30 minutes, because I know people, y'all are busy and our
Yes.
attention spans are short, but we wanted you to be present in this moment. So that's why we try to be like 30 minutes and done. But before we leave, I
Yeah.
do want to talk. We always add some resources. For me, the song for this present moment is Life is Just a Moment Part 2. And that is old school Jersey house music, not to be confused with Jersey club music. Both are dope, but Jersey house music, Life is Just a Moment. And so that's one song that I absolutely love that I'm going to throw on the playlist. But then also a movie that I watched recently that was talking about the power of being in the present moment was called My Old Ass. Exactly like I
Ooh.
said, My Old Ass. But it was an amazing and a beautiful little love story, but also about the lessons and why it's so important not to be living in the future and to live right now in the present moment. Even if you knew something bad was going to happen, how can you take advantage of it in the present moment? So I want you to be present today. Find reasons and find ways to start your present or presence exercises in your own life so that you can make sure that you are living and operating in the present moment, because it is the present moment that creates your future
Yep.
moments. We love you and thank you for listening to Get In Here. We'll see you next week. Until next time, get in here, get in here, get in here.